Just when you thought the Cubs were getting hot, they drop a goose egg up on the scoreboard and lose to the Minnesota Twins 3-0 yesterday at Wrigley Field. We're going to talk about that game, including their poor offensive approach that led to 14 strikeouts out of the 27 outs. That and more on this edition of the Cubs Baseball Channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Get in that comment section. Let us know how you're feeling about this team with Shota Imanaga on the mound tonight for the Northsiders. Here is your invitation to our show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Cubs Baseball Channel. My name's Anthony Pasquale. He is Mick Gillespie. You can find him on social media at Broadcaster Mick. I'm at Ant_Pasquale3, and the Cubs Baseball Channel is on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So find us on there as we post some of our videos here on YouTube. Also, some questions, some polls, all that Cubs talk that you love to find on here, you can find on those channels as well. But Mick, Cubs lose yesterday by the score of 3-0. Just an all-around bad game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, these are all important games, and this is something that this team's run into a lot, and that's where they just can't hit. And you got a lot of outs in the lineup, a lot of strikeouts. Some of the at-bats were less than competitive, and then the umpire wasn't good. So, you mix all of that stuff in there. But we've seen this so many times that it's like, well, I mean, you can't just sit there and say, well, it was the umpire. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's the bottom line is you got to go out there and make things happen, and they just didn't do it. So we've seen – how many times have we seen this happen?
Yeah, this game is definitely one that felt like it was on replay. Just going up and down the lineup, Ian Happ, 2 strikeouts. Bush struck out 4 times. Bellinger twice. Tauchman 3 times. Overall, 14 Ks. But I want to ask you one question about a piece of the offense. Isaac Paredes has struggled mightily since coming over in that trade for Christopher Morel, but it hasn't just been in his brief time with the Cubs. It's been like for over the last month or so that he just hasn't been able to get it going offensively. Are you worried about him?
Well, no. I mean, but there's a lot of pressure when you give up good players and 3 of them to get 1 back. And this is a big move. I mean, this is, when you play in Tampa, you play in Oakland, nobody pays attention. Miami, nobody cares. You come to Chicago, you go to New York, you go to LA, and all of a sudden the same game becomes a lot more pressure packed because there's a lot more people that are watching, paying attention, that care. And so that's an adjustment. But I think that he's good. He's an all-star. I think he's eventually going to figure it out. But they could use that now because we still kind of are holding out hope that this team could make the playoffs.
Yeah, if you want to be a playoff team this year, he has to be a big part of it. And that's why you go and give Christopher Morel and Hunter Biggie and Ty Johnson to go get the guy. I'm hoping a hot streak is right around the corner, and I'd love to see it from him. But for me, this is the storyline of the game. You got Kyle Hendricks on the mound, a guy who this season has been shaky at best. And he gives you 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. You cannot waste that game and lose. If you get an outing like that from Kyle Hendricks, how do you lose that game?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the hair. I just tell you that.
Thanks.
So what's different here? Look, man, this has been the entire season. You get a good outing from Hendricks and you don't score him any runs. When you score him runs, he gives up a lot of runs, So honestly, I'm impressed, even though the Cubs lost, that Kyle Hendricks is kind of, he's hanging on, man. I mean, like he's looking more and more like the guy that I thought the Cubs would have this year. I mean, he's not perfect. He's at the end of his career, but he goes out there and battles. And I think if I'm playing on the team and I'm looking at like the oldest guy we got and he's out there fighting his ass off, like that would be something that would be contagious.
You think?
Right. But then I watch some of those at bats and the approach and I'm going, man, I don't know. Like this team, they just don't know how to win. I mean, they just don't like, and I talked about that on a video the other day. I think that a lot of that has to do with, you take away a lot of these lifelong baseball people that teach you that analytics can't. But they don't want anybody in these organizations who's going to say, hey, man, you know what? I know your analytics are this, but this is how you do it. So they get rid of all of them. And then you see this team and you're like, what's going on? Why can't they figure it out?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, we're in there trying to hit home runs every time. And when we don't hit home runs, we can't figure out a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
They act like they discount singles and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I just look at this team and they've had too many of these games where where was the offense? There was no offense ever, and so it's frustrating, man. I mean, like, but we keep holding out hope, Ant, that we're like, okay, today's the day.
Yeah.
It's never the day.
Exactly. And we always think that they're turning a corner. Like, you go back to the last game in the Red Series, they score 13 runs, and they followed up with that huge comeback against the Cardinals. And you go on a little win streak and you're like, man, they're finally winning ball games. They're finally putting runs up on the board. They're finally battling. And then they go and give a game away because a miscommunication on a fly ball. Then you win the next one. You're like, all right, great answer on Sunday Night Baseball. We're back. Let's go into the series against the Twins. And then nothing. It's just every time you think this team is giving you flashes of competitiveness, they quickly remind you who they are. And they did that once again yesterday. They now fall to 5 games below 500. They're in last place in the NL Central, 9 back of the Brewers, who are struggling in their own right, and 7 back in the National League wild card. It's getting bleaker and bleaker, but the fact of the matter is this Cubs schedule lightens up a little bit after the Twins.
Well, I mean, it could be a lot worse. I mean, look at the White Sox.
Yeah.
I mean, we make fun of the White Sox, like we do, but this is even worse than we could even make fun of. Like, the last time the Cubs played the White Sox, remember they were rolling on like a 14 or a 15 game losing streak. Now it's like, hey, we're gonna take that losing streak and we're gonna multiply that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know but they play the Cubs tough. They're not going to roll over for the Cubs, even though they seem to roll over for everybody else. But the schedule, it really doesn't even matter what the schedule looks like, because the bottom line is that when the Cubs are supposed to go out there and do something, it's just not consistent. See, even when they play the bad teams, it doesn't matter. They could beat any team, but they could lose to any team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And as much as you want to get excited about playing the White Sox and the Nationals and the A's and the Rockies, like you get to do in the last month and a half, 2 months, you still have to play the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Yankees, and you're going to have to win some of those games if you want to go where some people still have hope that they can go. But that also starts with winning tonight against the Twins, 7:05 at Wrigley Field. There was some talk about pushing Shota Imanaga back because the Cubs don't typically like starting him on 4 days rest. They would rather start him on 5 or 6. But just the way the rotation is lining up, he needs to go tonight, and that's who is the scheduled probable pitcher for the Cubs. He's 8-2 on the year with a 3.09 ERA. Of course, he's an all-star OL, up against Pablo Lopez, who isn't having the best year, but is one of the better pitchers in baseball. 10-7 on the season with a 4.65 ERA. Mick, what do you make of this matchup?
Well, I love it. I mean, look, anytime Shota pitches, it's an event now. It's Shota mania, right? So I'm a big Shota mania fan. And then, Pablo Lopez, this is a guy that the Cubs ought to be able to score some runs against. Hopefully they'll have more competitive at bats, and they'll be able to put some offensive pressure on Lopez and the Twins. These are games you want to win. This is also a series that, to me, I can't stand. Like, playing Minnesota, I would much rather it be the Pirates or the Reds or the Cardinals, teams in your division. Like, this is the downside. This is the dark side of interleague play, this series. I'm watching the Twins and I'm like, man, they should be playing the White Sox right now. We should be playing the Cardinals or whatever,
Yeah, it seems like whenever you want to be playing your division, you get a series against the Twins or the Guardians or the Blue Jays, and that's who the Cubs have coming up over the next few. I'm a little bit worried about Lopez because if David Festa was able to strike out 9 across 5 innings, I'm a little worried to see what Lopez will do to the Cubs lineup. But hopefully the approach is a little bit different tonight, and the Cubs back Shota Imanaga. He seems like the only guy that they consistently score for, so hopefully they put some runs up on the board tonight for Imanaga at Wrigley Field. But guys, thanks so much for tuning into the Cubs Baseball channel. We always appreciate talking to you guys on here, chopping it up. So make sure to keep on liking and subscribing. Pass it along to your friends if they love talking about the Cubs as well. Get in that comment section and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram as well. But for now, we will talk to you guys tomorrow, hopefully after a Cubs W. Go Cubs.